Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the May 4th iteration of the SIG Windows Kubernetes community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct and Standards. Let's kind of get into this. All right, let's see if there's anybody kind of new to the call who would like to do some introductions, or anybody else who just would like to introduce themselves. I think I've seen pretty much everybody on the call, so we could probably skip that bit and go right to some of the announcements. The first big announcement here is that enhancement freeze is next week. It is May 13th. The release team has decided to move up the enhancement deadline rather than pushing out the code freeze deadline for the 122 release to hopefully give more coding time for enhancement implementation. So just let's make sure to get all of the enhancements that we want kind of up and in there. After the next announcement, we can go through some of the current enhancements we're tracking and just make sure Sladen is in sync with everything that's going on. But we did have one other announcement that we wanted to make today. I don't, Deep, do you want to say anything?
Hey, Mark, sure. Pretty much over the past quarter, I have not had a lot of cycles to contribute effectively to SIG Windows. And yeah, given certain changes in personal life, etc., I have planned to step down from the tech lead role in SIG Windows. It's been awesome working with all of you over the past couple of years and been super rewarding and enjoyed it a lot. I wish you all the best of success. Still planning to continue the work on CSI proxy and get that to the finish line.
Yeah, for those who are kind of newer to the project, Deep was very instrumental in a lot of the very early initiatives to get Windows workloads running on Kubernetes, the push to beta, the push to alpha, or GA, a lot of the storage related work. Just kind of he had his hands in lots of different pieces early on, and we really appreciate all of the work and wanted to thank you and hope that you'll continue working in the project, even if it's in a little bit reduced capacity.
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
So with that, some of the leads and I were discussing, and I think current plans, and we wanted to open this up for the process of the kind of selecting the replacement for Deep. And we've kind of come to the consensus that Claudio Ballou, who is also on the call, we wanted to promote him to tech lead. Claudio also has had a lot of kind of long-standing contributions in SIG Windows with all of the same efforts. He's done an amazing work over the past, say, 18 plus months to get the test images building in tree in Kubernetes, and which has had a huge impact in the velocity and reliability of our test signal, and he's just kind of been all around helping with bug fixes and everything. So Claudio, do you want to introduce yourself to folks who might be newer here, and then we can
Sure, thank you. Although you have already done that for me. You pretty much said everything that I wanted to say.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Deep, for all your contributions. And surely I will have some big shoes to fill. But hopefully we will still continue to work on the same SIG Windows projects and so on and so forth. Thank you for the opportunity and chance. I have worked a lot on image building processes and so on and so forth. I kind of got to, if I may brag a little bit, master them. So if you ever have any problems or issues or need some help regarding Windows container images, just hit me up and I'll gladly give you a helping hand towards that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to continue helping SIG Windows and the community.
Yep, thanks again, Deep and Claudio. So for anybody who's kind of unfamiliar with the process, the next steps here are we open it up to a period for either comment or, I guess, complaints, if anybody has any objections to the nomination, and we will be sending a mail with announcing this to a bunch of lists, including the Kubernetes SIG Windows mailing list, and with kind of instructions on how to contact any of the SIG current leadership team here if anybody does have any concerns about that. And if not, there's a lazy consensus period, and then in a couple of weeks, we'll kind of make this official. So stay tuned for that. All right, I think we can go back to talking about the current 122 enhancements for a little bit. I think that we're still tracking 2 enhancements.
I figured, Mark, since we're in the announcements, I just
sure.
give a little shout out to Sladen, because he has been slogging through trying to get the development environments up and running. So I just wanted to let you know how much we appreciate that, Sladen. But yeah, keep going.
Awesome. Yeah, that will be very beneficial once it's up and running. So the 2 enhancements I believe we're still tracking are the host process KEP, and that one is more or less, I think we're reaching consensus. So that one slipped from 121. The implementation PR just didn't merge in time. There was a couple of open questions on the implementation PR that I think are now resolved based on a Slack conversation. So that actually, the implementation PR for Alpha should be ready to merge anytime. I will double check and kind of drive that to completion, and we'll get the KEP marked in as Alpha and the enhancement all kind of done in 122. The next enhancement that we were tracking was the node service log viewer KEP from Aravind. Do you want to spend a minute to give any updates there?
Yeah, sure. So I think what has happened is Tim Hawken was asking for sort of a heuristic approach for getting the logs, rather than us being explicit about whether we want to get logs from a file or a process. So I'm guessing it's fine to do that and give it a shot. So I've not had cycles to go back and update that KEP to reflect the sort of heuristics that we discussed in the PR. So hopefully I should be able to get it in, and it should satisfy Tim, and we can get that merged.
Yeah, and I think Tim even said he is not convinced that this is this isn't necessary, but he'd like to see it at least attempted. And if it turns out to be a bad idea, we'll go back to just the original implementation. So hopefully we'll get that all merged and marked as implementable in the next week or so.
Yep.
If anybody else is planning on introducing any KEPs for SIG Windows in this release cycle, please reach out to myself, Sladen, who is the enhancement liaison for this release, and any of the tech leads to make sure that that gets marked and tracked for this release.
One other thing I'd bring up is there's the PSP pod security policy vNext KEP that has some open questions on Windows. And tomorrow we're going to be discussing it at the SIG Auth meeting. So there's quite a long kind of back and forth on a couple different ways to achieve this. And if you have any thoughts or opinions or strong feelings, please let them be known.
Yeah, for that, they have the SIG Auth, I believe, has spun out a separate meeting series specific to the PSP replacement. And there's a meeting tomorrow at 1 p.m. PST where that will be getting discussed in further detail. So if anybody is interested, please join or at least review the meeting notes and review the KEP. All right. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to announce or share?
Yeah, I had a thing. So thank you, Jay, by the way, for the amazing shout out. Since the release team was announced last week, I've been selected as the release notes shadow. And according to discussions, I don't think we can take up 2 roles, like the release liaison as well as a release notes shadow, so I might not be able to do the release liaison for SIG Windows. And yeah, so I might just be able to do one role for this release. So yeah, I guess I had to make that announcement in this meeting. Yeah. So I might be able to help you folks find another liaison. But yeah, I might just have to do one role.
Okay, that's good to know. Yes, if anybody is interested in potentially either helping out or just acting as the SIG Windows release liaison, please let us know. And thank you, Slayton. I think that's a
Yeah,
great
I'll be
opportunity.
still sticking around for the contributions though.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity as well.
That's cool. Are we going to see decreased contributions from you as you focus on other things, or increased, or the same?
No, absolutely not. I'm enjoying myself here. I just
Okay,
can't
cool.
officially be a release liaison. That's it.
Okay, cool. I mean, I'm supportive of either way, Slayton. I know you're new, so I think picking your bandwidth and letting us know is great. So, but if you're gonna continue to stick around, then I'm gonna be very happy to hear that. As
Yeah,
well. Great.
Definitely.
Okay, cool.
All right, Jay, do you want to take over the next agenda item?
Do I have a should we go? Oh yeah. So Dan Winship wrote a KEP about 3-4 months ago about the idea of micro versioning. And for the Windows conformance stuff, I think we're going to start ramping up on it. Me and Pere are working hard to talk to our PM about getting some upstream cycles, and I think he's okay with it. So, and the question is, like when Dan wrote this KEP, it was about network stuff, but like it was kind of a cool idea, right? The idea was, and I think Windows sort of might fall into this category. Like there's just a lot of ways to define network security, and it's tricky to say pass fail. And so he had this concept of like micro versioning. So I was like, well, if we're going to explore this idea of making our own conformance definition, then I think it would be kind of cool to do what this to sort of look at it a different way than what we currently look at. We currently look at Linux conformance as this black and white thing, right? But what if we didn't look at it that way and we actually looked at it as some kind of basically everything that Windows does is a feature, and the purpose of Windows conformance is to verify that you conform to those features and then to output the features you support. So I don't think this is ever going to pass in the form that Dan wrote it for network policies, but I think it was a really great idea. And I think I would be supportive of it passing for the network policy stuff, but I'm just wondering, do we want to consider micro versions for that, or do we want to go with the binary definition of Windows conformance? And I'm totally okay with people telling me I'm crazy because I know this whole micro versioning thing is very controversial. And do we want to think about it more, or is it just, no, this is a horrible idea? Like,
could you explain what micro versioning is a little bit more? I actually.
Well, so the micro versioning thing from Dan's perspective, and I'm kind of using that term loosely here, but like from Dan's KEP's perspective, the way I kind of define it is like, well, certain CNIs support named ports. They support that as a security primitive. You can define a policy against a named port. Other CNIs don't support that. And so right now, our current policy suite, it just fails if you're one of those CNIs that doesn't support that. And, there's drift, right, between OVS and Cilium and Calico and Antria in terms of what can and can't be supported based on the underlying hardware of how the CNI works, if it's eBPF or if it's, whatever. So in Windows, I think there's this idea of I don't know if micro versioning is really even the right term now that you ask me, but like the idea that like, well, when we define the actual conformance set, should we be actually defining like, okay, Windows supports Active Directory. We've got 20 Active Directory tests. And when we run the tests, you know, we can give you a green or a red that you support Active Directory in terms of the way we define it for Windows conformance, which is that you can launch a pod that has a name that's injected from an AD server, blah, blah, blah. And so you either pass or you fail that battery of tests, but we don't really define it as pass fail. We define it as we output, here are the features that you support. And then that winds up being Windows conformance, right? So the output of our tests is not a pass or a fail, but rather like a matrix. Not a bunch of ginkgo sentences that don't make any sense, right? But like a higher level categorization of stuff.
I don't have a ton of experience here, but I thought that was that sounds very similar to like my understanding of like the conformance profiles. Is like you might pass Windows generally, but then there might be another conformance profile that was for AAD generally.
Okay.
Is that kind of the idea of what you're thinking?
What's a conformance profile? I don't know what that is. Maybe.
Is Adelina on the call? I don't think she is. She was looking into this, and
okay.
I think the new direction, at least there's some conversations happening in for the conformance tests where you would have a conformance profile, which would be a subset of tests based on you know, the features that you're trying to implement. And so I don't have a ton of information on that, but this might be kind of similar to what you're looking for there.
I mean, I'm down to not to literally just borrow that. So I'll go look at the cap. Okay. So conformance profiles. So oh yeah, I think I've got it. So we have a cap. It was written 12 months ago, and it looks like, is it graduated? What is it? So, okay. So it says, currently there's a single set of conformance tests which are used to cover and vendor all cloud provider Kubernetes offerings. Any given offerings must. This is, yeah, kind of exactly what I was talking about. So we basically build a profile. The current set of conforming behaviors represents only a small set of. So basically all we have to do then is make a Windows conformance profile, except this thing isn't done. Except nobody finished the cap. Okay. Yeah.
That's right.
Awesome. Okay. So we just got to find who owns this cap and be like, can we take it over? Or are you going to finish it? Who wrote this? John Bellarmine. Yeah. And Jeff Tree. Are any of us friends with these folks?
We could definitely just ping them. I've interacted with most of the folks here quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I guess what we could do is that could be what we do then is we could actually define a Windows. So we could write so when we write our definition or our cap or whatever, we could write it as basically saying, look, we'll define this and our goal is to integrate with the conformance profiles work. That way we're not blocked on this graduating if we don't want to be. And we can just sort of go down that direction. But I guess James, that's kind of like a soft yes, that yes, this is probably what we want to do because Adelina was doing it anyways. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so my question's answered.
All right, I guess we'll keep looking. We'll see what's happening with this conformance profiles and then see if we want to adopt that.
Cool.
All right, thanks. I think that's a good discussion to have. Jeremy, did you want to discuss node problem detector?
Sure. So basically, we've actually made a lot of progress on this area. Michelle's actually with me today, and I'd actually like to give it over to her if she's here to talk about the MVP for no problem detector.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello. For most of you who don't know me, I am with Google about 5 months now. So I've been working on the node problem detector for Windows. And for Windows, we have a few critical services that we're checking right now: Docker, Crycuddle, Containerd. We're planning to add some more health checks as we go. We have kind of a proof of concept ran on our own Windows nodes, ran locally, and I think Jeremy's working towards building out the release for MPD. And so basically, we're just trying to let you guys know that this is the progress we're making. This is what we're doing. It's exciting news that we're actually seeing things being caught and being reported to the exporters. And if anybody has any thoughts or any issues that they'd like to see covered or detected by MPD, by all means, we are open for feedback. We're also open to collaborate with any of you if you're all interested at all in working on this. We have like some high-level plans of what we want to do and what we want to continue integrating with NPD. So if anybody has any questions with that, we would definitely be willing to meet up and talk and chat more about details. Does anybody have any questions from that so far? I know it was brief. Or does anybody have any questions about no problem detector itself? Or can I assume everybody here is kind of familiar with it?
It's awesome. Would you maybe come back and do a demo of it at some point for SIG Windows? I think that'd be kind
of for sure. Cool. For sure.
Yeah, I had thought at one point there was a document that I believe Jeremy started that was outlining a lot of that we were using to collect feedback for what types of problems that we want to detect. Let me try and find that again, and we can add that to the agenda here. Because I have some ideas of things to look for, but I'm not entirely sure what the current set is. So I'll hold some comments until after I review that.
For sure. Are you talking about the node detector problem for Windows with the summary, motivation, all that whatnot?
Yeah, I think so.
Let's see.
Yeah, if not, I can find it after this meeting.
Tyler, you're on Slack. We can coordinate for maybe a demo next week or whenever's appropriate.
Yeah, I see. Okay, Jeremy linked the doc. Let me do this. Keiko did ask she'd like to understand more on the node detector. Do you want to dive into that a little bit now for the rest of the meeting, or James? Oh, I see you added an agenda item.
I can give like quite a high level over detail, and then we can go into more details, Keiko, a little bit later. But basically, node detector, the node problem detector is a Windows service that's running on a Windows node, and it's scanning for problems and issues that are going to determine this node to be unhealthy. And the goal is basically to stop, scheduling pods or stop scheduling new things on a node that's corrupt or unhealthy. There's also a few different kind of segues for like plugins where we detect something is down and we try to actually restart it, for example, like Docker, Crycuddle, Containerd. Those are one of the ones that we detect and see, okay, can we restart and see if we can mitigate having to mark this node as unhealthy. So that's kind of essentially what it's doing. I am kind of compiling another doc of use cases that we're going to try to get ready for public use and public viewing, for people to actually take a look and add their thoughts and see what we want to actually detect. And so we want to make sure we're detecting issues that will determine this node as unhealthy, if that makes sense, Keiko.
Yeah, no, this is great because like that's one of the things that's missing. I've worked on the Linux side, but like never on the Windows. So this is cool. Like definitely thank you for the documentation too.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of details in that doc, so that'd be good for everybody to review. But I think, yeah, we could use this to eventually start detecting performance problems, setting thresholds for certain performance counters that cluster operators would care about, and all of that. After we kind of tick off all of the basic requirements, like make sure the services are running, the Windows features are installed, there's no updates, and all of that goodness.
Yep.
Thanks a lot for this work. And I think, yeah, as mentioned here, this is an area that if anybody is interested in getting in helping to contribute. There's, I think, a lot of work, and this is fairly well scoped and defined. So this might be a great place to start getting some contributions or start contributing for SIG Windows. All right, with that, James, do you want to take or discuss this next item?
Yeah, so at the end of release 121, we had just a short Slack conversation around some of the release informing tests. And I just wanted to bring it back up and see if we wanted to do anything about this. There's quite a few of the GCE tests on there, which are in much better shape than they were initially, thanks to a lot of good work that Jeremy and folks have done. But there was kind of proposed to potentially move some of the AKS engine tests onto the release forming dashboards. This wouldn't necessarily remove any tests. They would all still be on all of our dashboards, but there's been just a little bit more activity on the AKS engine tests, and they're a little bit greener right now. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if anybody had any thoughts or objections to transitioning to some of those.
Yeah, I think some of the outcomes of the discussion were that some of the AKS engine tests tend to be investigated a little bit more promptly than some of the GCE ones. So it might make sense to keep those as the release informing tests, since that's where the release team looks at near the end of the release cycle. And as James mentioned, we wouldn't be changing the frequency or set of tests that run anywhere, just which ones are presented as a signal to the release team. I see Peter mentioned no objections from the Google side. So Jeremy +1. All right, maybe we could leave this open for comment for another week and then come back next week if there are any other objections with this. All right, I think that brings us to the top of the hour. Does anybody have any? Oh, okay, go ahead, Jane.
Thank you. So I just want to double check the container D status because what I see for GC in tree driver, it does not work on container D. The error message is very similar to the one you investigated before related to SMB, but it is not like the same error, because for SMB at that time read the fail to resolve symlink because there is like you need to add trailing slash, and remember that is the workaround.
Yeah, I am aware of two separate problems. One of them is for SMB shares, and that was with the way the paths were constructed, and those needed to have a trailing slash. For anything that's a physical disk, there is another issue with container D that there's some devs in the container D project that are working to address that. And I believe that there's an issue that is almost has consensus in getting merged. I see James just linked into this. If it's related to
resolve symlink.
This will hopefully address the issue. We are still seeing this with the Azure Disk tests on container D as well. And this fix we've determined needs to be addressed in container D itself, and that's where this PR is.
Okay. So right now in open source container D already the default one in 121 or for Windows?
I mean, yes and no. That which container runtime to use for Windows nodes is really determined by whoever is setting up the cluster. I don't think we have said for SIG Windows to use one or the other. I think we've said that that both work with a couple of caveats, and the Azure, or I guess any persistent disk CSI driver was called out as an issue that is an issue here. So if you're not using this, then I think you're fine to use container D. But I don't know if anywhere we actually have any defaults that say to use
No,
one or the
okay.
other.
Okay, so okay, this one should resolve the issue for persistent disk with container D.
Yes, and
Okay.
I believe that, yeah, that this has been validated with some scenarios. I need to double check which ones, but take a look at this. Take a look at
Okay.
this issue and see if this looks like it will, if it's the same issue.
Sure.
So Mark,
And
for
then-
this like PR, right? What's blocking us from releasing this, except for this conflict that's actually here for the Go?
I am not entirely sure what the process is for getting PRs merged in the Containerd project. So that would be up to any of the maintainers from that project to comment on that. It looks like it's got all of the approvals. I don't know if they have some of the same like CI bots that will just merge this once the merge conflicts are gone, or if somebody needs to manually merge it, but it looks like there's activity and reviews, so I would hope that this will get merged pretty soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this has been an issue for a while. I'm glad that there's some traction on this in the Containerd community.
Right. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I'm going to drop for the SIG node meeting. I guess, James, I'll hand it off to you for the pairing until Jay gets back.
Sounds good. So this will end our normal SIG